The salt-stained Duesenberg, a six-wheeled behemoth of polished black steel and supercharged straight-eight fury, ate up the miles between Nova Scotia and Samhain. Inside its leather-scented cabin, the only sounds were the engine's powerful thrum and the ragged rhythm of their own breathing. Agios Sophia, his knuckles white on the steering wheel, stared at the road ahead as if it might morph into a writhing tentacle. Beside him, Mandy huddled into her coat, her usual vibrant energy subdued, her eyes haunted by the memory of slick, grey shapes swarming in the churning black water behind their fleeing boat. The escape from St. Jude's Folly had been a thing of pure, adrenalized terror. They'd felt the lighthouse's wrongness long before they saw its inhabitants, a psychic pressure, a smell of deep brine and forgotten rot that clung to the salt air. Samoth, pale and gaunt and grinning like a skull from the lantern room gallery, had not been surprised to see them. He'd simply raised a hand, and the waters below had begun to churn with the thrashing arrival of deep ones. He looked nourished, Mandy said finally, her voice a quiet scratch in the humming silence. Not like a man hiding in a ruin, like a king on his throne. Agios grunted, a low, angry sound. The image was seared into his mind. Samoth, the villain they'd fought beneath the unnatural mist that had engulfed Samhain last year, standing triumphant. He'd vanished after that defeat, presumed dead or banished. But he had merely retreated, licked his wounds, and found a new fortress. A lighthouse. A beacon of safety perverted into a tool of murder. He's using the light, Agios said, his voice tight. Drawing them in. The rocks. They must be littered with wrecks by now. A feast for his friends. He couldn't bring himself to say the name the old books used. The deep ones. The words felt too heavy, too real, here in the stark daylight. They crossed Maine as the afternoon light began to fade, the familiar, brooding landscape of Samhain welcoming them with skeletal trees and a sky the color of a fresh bruise. They absently hoped the ill-used lighthouse had burnt behind them, a pyre for the monstrous and the mad, but both knew better. Evil that old, that patient, did not die so easily. It endured. The factory district of Samhain was a canyon of red brick and grimy windows, a place of shadows even at the best of times. AG Investigations, nestled between a silent textile mill and a warehouse, felt less like an office and more like a bunker. Inside, the air was still and carried the familiar scent of dust, old paper, and gun oil. Mandy went straight to the electric percolator, her movements automatic, seeking comfort in routine. Agios didn't bother taking off his black trench coat. He strode into his private office, a room dominated by a large oak desk littered with case files, a well-oiled Thompson submachine gun leaning in the corner, and a single stark photograph of the Earth as soon from the moon, a curiosity from what seemed a lifetime ago. He picked up the heavy black telephone, asked the operator for the Samhain Police Department, and drummed his fingers on the desk, taking some comfort from the dozen or so crucifixes ornately carved about it. Familiar, calm female voice answered, her light Spanish accent charming as ever. Officer Fernanda. Fernanda. It's Agios. There was a pause, then a measured, I heard you were away. The unspoken question hung between them, carried on the crackling line. We were. We ended up finding Samoth. Agios didn't need to elaborate. Street. Jude's Folly. He's turned it into a slaughterhouse. Another, longer pause. He could picture her, uniform crisp, her gorgeous face a mask of professional competence that barely concealed a sharp, agile mind. She'd been there during the night of the mist. She knew. The Folly, she breathed. There have been reports. Missing freighters. Unconfirmed wreckage on the outer islands. The Coast Guard thinks it's the storms. Her tone said she knew it wasn't. It's not the storms, Agios confirmed, his voice grim. We need to talk. All of us. Franco's, she said immediately. An hour. I'll see if Mr. Richardson is available. An hour later, the warm aromatic embrace of Franco's diner was a balm to their raw nerves. The gleaming chrome, the checkered floor, the sizzle of something good on the griddle, it was a pocket of defiant normality in a town that had become a magnet for the abnormal. Franco himself, a handsome man with a kind face and bright blue eyes that had seen too much, nodded gravely as they entered and gestured them toward a secluded booth in the back. They hadn't long to wait. Officer Fernanda arrived first, out of uniform in a practical yet stylish wool coat, her alert eyes missing nothing. Shortly after, the bell above the door chimed again, and Ronald Richardson entered. The Englishman was a study in contrasts to the diner's Americana. Impeccably dressed in a tweed suit slightly too warm for the season, he carried a cane in one hand, a worn leather satchel in the other, an air of austere academia about him. Yet his eyes, sharp and ancient behind his spectacles, held a knowledge that went far beyond books. He was a sorcerer, a practical man of metaphysics, and a crucial ally. Not to mention, he had served in the trenches of Europe during the Great War. Franco brought over a pot of coffee and a plate of donuts without being asked. "On the house," he rumbled, his voice low. "You all got that look. The one from last year. You just tell me what you need." He retreated, giving them their privacy. For a moment, there was only the sound of coffee being poured. Then Richardson steepled his fingers. "St. Jude's Folly. A place of singularly bad repute. The texts suggest it was built over a confluence. A weak place. I had feared as much when the reports began." "He's using the light," Mandy said, finding her voice. "Luring them in. The things in the water, they were waiting." Fernanda's jaw tightened. "We can't just send officers in. It's outside our jurisdiction, for one. For another, after what happened with the mist, the selectmen would have me committed. They want to believe it was a mass hallucination, a gas leak from the mills. They want everything to be normal." "Normalcy is a luxury we can no longer afford, officer," Richardson said softly. "Sam Moth is not a common criminal to be arrested. He is a high priest of a degenerate faith, and that lighthouse is his new cathedral. We cannot simply lay siege to it. His congregation is literally from the depths. A direct assault would be suicide." Agios stirred his coffee, the spoon clinking sharply against the china. "So we don't lay siege. We don't send men in boats. We make it so he has nothing to lure. We make the lighthouse itself the target." Richardson raised an eyebrow. "Go on." "The authorities might not believe in sea demons, but they believe in navigational hazards," Agios said, leaning forward, his stuntman's mind beginning to choreograph the impossible. "A decommissioned lighthouse that's become structurally unsafe is a problem they have to fix. They'll reroute traffic. It starves him. It isolates him. And how do we make a stone lighthouse structurally unsafe?" Fernanda asked, though a grim light was dawning in her eyes. Agios looked from her to Richardson to Mandy. The plan, audacious and terrifying, formed fully in his mind. We don't make it look unsafe. We make it be unsafe. We remove it. From a distance." Mandy's eyes widened. "Agios, you don't mean a plane," he said, the word hanging in the air between them. "We hire a plane. We load it with enough explosives to turn that blasphemous pile of rocks into a crater. We bomb it into oblivion." Silence engulfed the booth. The cheerful din of the diner seemed to fade away. Richardson slowly removed his spectacles and polished them with a silk handkerchief. "It is brutally direct," he murmured, a hint of admiration in his scholarly tone. "A strategic application of modern force against an ancient evil. It has a certain elegance." "It's insane," Fernanda stated, but she was nodding slowly. "It's also the only thing that might work. I can't provide official support, but I might know a guy at the airfield just next door in Portland. An ex-barnstormer, like you, Agios. He doesn't ask a lot of questions if the money's right." "And I," Richardson said, replacing his spectacles, "can provide certain incantations to be woven into the explosives. Nothing dramatic, no ethereal fireworks. Simply a reinforcement of intent. A blessing of dissolution to ensure that what we break stays broken. That the confluence is sealed, not merely covered." Mandy reached under the table and found Agios's hand. Her grip was firm. "I'll handle the logistics. Fuel. Maps. Timetables. We'll need to know tide charts, weather patterns. We only get one shot at this." They talked late into the evening, the plan coalescing from a desperate fantasy into a dangerous, concrete operation. Franco kept the coffee coming, and later, bowls of thick stew. They were no longer just a stuntman, an assistant, a cop, and a scholar. They were a unit, bound by the shared darkness of the mist and the greater darkness they now had to face as they finally rose to leave. The weight of their decisions settled upon them. They were not just planning to destroy a building, They were planning to erase a foothold of an ancient waking nightmare. The drive back to the office was quiet. The Duesenberg's engine now sounding like the steady, determined heartbeat of a coming storm. Back in the confines of AG Investigations, Agio stood at the window, looking out at the dark, sleeping factories of Samhain. Somewhere out there in the vast black Atlantic, a false light still shone, calling the innocent to their doom. But not for long. He could almost hear the drone of an engine, smell the high-octane fuel, and see the world tilting away beneath the wing of a plane. The stage was set for the most dangerous stunt of his life. This time, he wouldn't be walking away from the crash. He would be flying straight into it.